mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Part 1 of Season 4 of Netflix's Stranger Things. If you didn't already know, this first part is 7 episodes. The second part, which comes out on July 1st, episodes 8 and 9, will comprise Part 2. Now you think like, okay, it's split into 2 parts. Why 7 episodes and then 2 in the second volume? But I read an interview with the Duffer Brothers, and they said that they felt like episode 7 served as a great finale. It has everything you would need out of finale, but also sets up what they feel is a pretty compelling, singular kind of collection of episodes in episodes 8 and 9. And if you didn't already know, episodes 8 and 9 are super huge, big episodes. I believe episode 8 is like 90 minutes, like an hour and a half. And then the finale, episode 9, is 2.5 hours long. I'm really looking forward to watching these because I thought this first part of season 4 has been great. Stranger Things is not prestige television. It's going to have its flaws. I'm going to talk about some of those things in a little bit. But by and large, I think this is probably the second best season of Stranger Things. And it needed to make changes, and I think it made them well. This show kind of moved from something that I would call like a 80s nostalgic, maybe thriller at best. Like, it had the monsters or whatnot, but it always felt almost like fun, almost like these kids, like the Goonies. It felt like a high budget 2021, 2020, whatever fucking years you were watching it, version of the Goonies. This season felt like, okay, these kids are grown now. Like, I believe Millie Bobby Brown is over 18. Most of these actors are, I think, around the 17 to 19 age range. These kids are grown up now. And along with having them grow up, you need to have their storylines and what's happening to them grow up too. You can't still have them fucking playing Dungeons and Dragons and dealing with kid stuff when they're, 17, 18, 19 years old. So I like the fact that this season is a lot more mature. It's a lot darker. It's a lot more violent. And I feel like this season leans more into the horror genre as opposed to like an 80s nostalgic fun time that just has some exciting moments. Like, the Demogorgon pops up and shit happens and it's scary. But it always felt like almost like a modern version of an 80s, like I said, like the Goonies. This feels still Stranger Things, but not that. So I kind of appreciate, and it's not that I had a problem with that at all. I enjoyed the show. I always have. But I feel like this increase in maturity level was something that is welcome and it was needed. So I've really enjoyed this season for that reason, because it just feels like something that I'm going to be a little bit more engaged with. So let's see, where do I want to start with this one? Let's see, I already talked about, okay, so I'm tripping over my own words here because my brain works where it's like several thoughts will fire off at multiple times. So it's like, which thing do I want to talk about? But I think a good place to start with this first part of the season is the idea of separation, because the episodes are separated, but the cast and crew is separated as well. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I feel in ways I'm okay with it, in ways I'm not, but the cast being separated for the entire 7 episodes, I didn't feel like it was really necessary. There's aspects of this season that were drawn out for the 7 episodes that I feel like could have been wrapped up in a little bit less time, and we could have got these characters back on the screen together a little bit earlier. But then there's aspects of like the separated groups that are really compelling, but it's very clear that more attention was given to certain groups than others. So I'm going to talk about kind of like how this season started, how everything was set up, and how it kind of progressed in a non-spoilery fashion. So let's see. We start off with Elle, Will, and Jonathan. They're living in California. Mike is still in Hawkins. Mike and Elle are exchanging letters, keeping up with everything that's going on. And Elle is lying to Mike about her time there. She's making it sound really great, but the reality is that she's getting bullied. There's a great scene very early in the season, I want to say in the second episode, maybe the third, where Elle finally has had enough of being bullied and takes action. And everybody would look at this. Everybody would look at her response as maybe an overreaction. But now in 2022, when bullying is completely out of hand, I'm a big fan of something that doesn't really take place in America today, and it's something called consequences. A lot of people don't experience consequences for being fucking shitty people. So seeing Elle deliver consequences to someone who richly deserves it, regardless of the severity, because hey, she ain't dead. So regardless of the severity, I am supportive of what I saw in that scene. That was very much a fist pump scene for me because I'm so fed up with people being shitty and getting away with it. So to see somebody get their comeuppance that they richly deserve, I fucking love that scene. But Mike comes out to visit, and then the show plays around with this interesting kind of love triangle almost. Mike is obviously out there to see Elle, but I mean, he's a teenage boy. He's got a girlfriend he hasn't seen in a while. Of course, he's going to want to focus on Elle and not his best friend, Will. And we see Will take exception to that, particularly given that Elle isn't even being honest with him about what she's experiencing in the first place. And they play up this angle of, should Mike be spending more time with his best friend? Should Mike be spending more time with his girlfriend? How does his best friend feel about that? How does his girlfriend feel about that? And the show does something interesting in playing around with the idea. I can't even say playing around with. I think it was actually pretty overtly, not stated, but alluded to that Will is gay and in love with Mike. And that's something that I thought they did a great job of handling that with some nuance. I don't know if it's something that's ever going to completely come out. And if you think about the 1980s, you know, right now in 2022, it would be incredibly difficult for a guy to not only come out to his best friend, but to come out to his best friend and also be like, I like you. Like, that's not going to, no matter what year you're in, that's going to be a tough conversation. But in the 80s, when homophobia was rampant, it's still rampant now, but at least there's at least the conversation's a little bit different. And this is something that would be completely mind-blowing for Mike. And there's a great conversation that they have. I think they're sitting on top of like an RV or a truck or something like that. And Will is talking to Mike about why he might be struggling to connect with Elle. And it's one of those conversations where it's presented as him talking about Mike and Elle's situation, but you could tell the reality is that he's talking about himself. And it's a very interesting scene, and the scene that for me all but confirms that Will is in love with Mike. But I like the idea of them playing around with the relationship between a guy and his friend, and then a guy and his girlfriend, and then adding in the idea of like a kid in the 80s learning about who he is and how he feels about his own sexuality and who he likes, who he doesn't like. Like, I like the idea of this show playing around with that, even especially within the context of the 80s. So I thought that was something that the show did really well, despite the fact that that group of characters is separated from the Hawkins group. But then Elle is separated from the group as well. And then they kind of leave that alone. Like, we don't really see Mike and Will and Jonathan as much. You know, they introduced this new character, Argyle, who's a friend of Jonathan. I think Argyle is a great character, by the way. Kind of like your comic relief guy for this season. And, you know, they go on this mission to figure out, like, this lab, or I think, trying to figure out where this computer is so they can figure out what this lab is, and they're going to go try to save Elle or figure out where she is or whatever. But by and large, they leave Mike and Will and Jonathan and Argyle in California. And then we kind of spend the rest of that part of the storyline with Elle trying to get her powers back and learn about her past. And that stuff gets pretty compelling as well. We see a lot of flashbacks to Elle's time that would have been before she escaped from the Hawkins lab. And we're introduced to another interesting character who is an orderly in the hospital. And I'm going to talk about the orderly a little bit later, but that aspect of the storyline gets pretty compelling as well. And then in Hawkins, we're left with Lucas, Dustin, Nancy, Steve, Robin, and this new cast member named Eddie Munson. People start dying again, as is the case in Hawkins. and they're being infected somehow by someone named Vecna, who is somehow able to infect these people from the upside down. He's doing it wireless. He's doing it wirelessly. And he seeks out people who seem to have some sort of unresolved trauma in their life, some sort of grief, or maybe somebody who was wishing for their own life to end in the first place. There's a moment where Vecna has a conversation with when I was listing all who was in Hawkins. I forgot that what's her fucking now I forgot her name. I can't go on without remembering her name. But why am I drawing a blank on her name right now? Oh my god, this is not the time. But there's an interesting conversation between her and Vecna. It's bugging me that I can't find out what is her name. Why is it bothering me? Well, I know why it's bothering me. Why can't I remember her name? Let's see. Max. Okay, there we go. Max. So I don't know why can I remember her name? There's a great conversation. Makes it sound like a lot more friendly than it was, but there's a great dialogue between Max and Vecna that to me suggested that Vecna seeks out his victims he seeks out people who might be questioning whether or not they want to stay alive. Like they've experienced some sort of trauma and they don't know how to come back from it, and they feel like they might be at their end. And that's just my guess. They haven't been entirely clear on how Vecna picks his victims, but either way, this guy Vecna's coming around. He's infecting these people and killing them in all these kind of gnarly ways. Like they end up floating in the air, their bones start to crack, their arms and legs twist in ways that don't make sense, and their eyes go black and then they die. And Eddie, one of the new characters, gets accused of is accused of killing one of these people that Vecna kills. As usual, Dustin, of course, takes the lead in trying to prevent Eddie from going down for this specific murder. And then they also have to figure out not only what is happening, how it's happening, but also ultimately how they're going to solve it. So, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the group being split up, but I also didn't find myself yearning for them to reunite either. I found each individual group to be compelling. Like I said, Mike, Will, and Jonathan didn't get too much time after Ella separated from them, but they did get some time. They had a particularly really good action sequence, a shootout sequence that was really well done. But they do a great job of keeping you engrossed in these individual storylines so that you don't have to sit there and go, I wish Mike and Will and Jonathan were back in Hawkins, or I wish I wish all these people were together. You don't have to yearn for that as much because they do a great job of keeping them all compelling individually. But there is a separation that I was not a fan of, which was Hopper. Hopper is not with anybody the whole first 7 episodes. He is still stuck in this Russian prison, and he's trying to figure his own way out, and Joyce and Murray are also trying to figure out how they can save him. The Russian storyline was not good to me. It had a very exciting ending. Like the final episode 7, great stuff there in the Hopper storyline for sure. But the previous 6 episodes, I felt like they could have done that in maybe 2 and got Hopper back with everyone else, because Hopper felt so detached. Because at least it was like the Hawkins people, they're still a big group together. They're just missing some people, and those people are with Elle, and Elle's got her storyline, and they got their storyline, and they never feel too far apart to me. Hopper alone in Russia just felt like an entirely different show. It was just so far detached from everything, and I really didn't feel like we needed that. He befriends this Russian guard who was played by the guy who played Jaqen H'ghar on Game of Thrones. Looks like a Russian, has a completely different accent, but still the same voice, so you can still tell it's him. It was pretty interesting. But like I said, while I didn't like that, I did like Joyce and Murray working together and figuring out, is Hopper alive? If so, where is he? Okay, that's where he is. How do we get there? Oh, now that we're here, how do we get him out? Like, they had a whole lot of obstacles to overcome, and I found a lot of their stuff pretty compelling as well. If I were to nitpick a little bit, aside from the fact that I didn't like Hopper being separated from everyone else, the show is a bit predictable. like I mentioned, the orderly at the top of the episode that I mentioned at the top of the video, we see this guy in L's flashbacks, and I think it's very obvious early on this character's significance. I think I had it figured out who this guy was in like episode 2 or something like that. I'm like, okay, I know who this guy is going to be. They do have a twist with him at the end that was not as predictable. I figured it out before they officially put it on the screen, but not like well in advance. Like I figured it out in the same episode. Like early in episode 7, I was like, oh, okay, here's what's going to happen with that guy. And then that's what ends up happening. But the first part of it, I had it figured out very early on. So if nothing else, it's a little bit predictable. But again, this is one of those things where it's like, I can nitpick. Oh, like I can, pat myself in the back. Like, oh, I figured out who that guy was early on. I can nitpick that and make that a flaw of the show. But at the end of the day, the pros here far outweigh the cons. Like I said, second best season in my opinion. So, I don't have any complaints that I feel like would hinder my ability to endorse this show and to say, yeah, this season, it's good. Fuck with it. They stretch, I think, the plausibility of some things a little bit in this season. In a show where plausibility is already stretched pretty thin, right? But even within that context, there's some things that stretch the plausibility a little bit farther that I think kind of lean into those earlier seasons where it's almost done more for laughs. But now it doesn't fit in tonally with the rest of the show. And now it just didn't really work. When the show feels a little bit goofier in tone, a little bit younger in tone, you can have these scenes that almost are meant to come off as funny and they still fit in. But when the show is giving you big horror vibes and you have a scene that feels pretty implausible that seems to be played for laughs, it doesn't really work. But aside from that, at the end of the day, this has been a great fun season, a really dark season, and just flat out thrilling television. So I'm really excited for these final 2 episodes. I don't know how I'm going to handle them on this channel. July 1st, I'm assuming, is a Friday. I'm also assuming my wife and I will probably get through the first one on that night. And then we might end up getting through the second one a little bit later because it's 2.5 hours. So what I might do is just wait until we can finish the 2 episodes and then just come on here and talk about the 2 episodes. But what I'll probably do is I'll talk about them a little bit more in depth, like on the shows that I cover week by week, rather than this like all-encompassing kind of like, here are my general thoughts on the season that I've done here. I'll probably get a little bit more in depth and talk about those 2 episodes collectively and just what I thought of the season and what I think we might be setting up for season 5 going forward. So until July 1st, thereabouts. I would say maybe more like the 5th or 6th. The 1st is a Friday. I'm gonna be watching UFC on Saturday. I don't know what's gonna be Sunday. I'm probably be watching Westworld Sunday night on probably be July 3rd. I'll probably be watching Westworld, and you got July 4th. So maybe July 5th, I might be able to finish that second episode. It's 2.5 hours long, so who knows? And then I can get with you guys sometime that week, July 6th, 7th, 8th, somewhere in there, and give my thoughts on there. So until then, peace.